Navy Matters.
Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Rich Acritelli, and on today's episode of The Fog of War and Humanity here on hmTv, I have my special guest with me today from the SailAhead.org organization, Sean Duclay, to speak about how his organization has helped veterans deal with PTSD and some serious situations that they might deal with as they come home from war, especially during the War on Terror. Sean, here we go. Where did you grow up, and what were some of your interests?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Huntington, right here on Long Island, and I grew up very active, playing soccer and sailing. Sailing has been in my family for generations. So my dad likes to tell a story that when I was in the cradle, they would put me on the high side of the boat as a ballast. So I've really been on boats my whole life. You know?
All right. So you've known the water. You've always had good experiences.
No, I wouldn't say that.
All right. Well, some positive stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. Now, did you sail competitively? Did you do any of that stuff?
I did, and with veterans, we've done, even with Angel, we've raced. We've also done offshore races like the Martha's Vineyard race and the Block Island race. Those are really fun. They're multi-day races, and you don't stop until the race is over. So you're on watch, a few hours on, a few hours off, and yeah. So it's we've competed before.
All right. So when you're growing up in Huntington, you're around the water. I was a Port Jeff kid, so I was a little bit further out east, right? And one thing about Long Island, the water's close, no matter where you live, right? What kind of boats did you start out on?
I started like most young kids that learn to sail. I started on Optimists, which are I think they're 8 feet long and 4 feet wide. They can probably be accurately described as bathtubs.
All right.
They have flat noses, so if there's a little bit of chop and they hit waves, you lose all your momentum. But it's the boat you learn on, and then you kind of graduate to the next boat that's a little faster, and so on and so forth, until you're on a 2-person boat, and then most of the sailing we do now at Sailhead are on keel boats.
Okay.
And those tend to be a lot larger. And they have a keel, which is a very heavy sort of fin. And that prevents you from drifting, and that prevents the boat from flipping over. Because when you're on a dinghy, the boats do flip over. It's called capsizing. And it's not really a big deal. You just flip it back. Sometimes you bail out the water.
That's not a great word, capsizing, all right?
No.
That's not something you want to do regularly, right?
And definitely not on a keel boat.
All right. So now when you were growing up, your dad, he taught you how to do a lot of this stuff?
Yeah, so my dad is French, and he moved to the U.S. when he fell in love with my mom, who's from Brooklyn. And my dad is a sailor. His parents were sailors. It goes on. My grandma tells me that some of our ancestors sailed with Lafayette on the Hermione.
Okay. It's a big name for over here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've never been able to fact check it, but I take her word for it.
Yeah.
So we have a long legacy of sailing. Not only that, but in that legacy of sailing, many of my ancestors were officers in the French Navy. So we always had that military spirit in us,
Where in France? On the Atlantic side or in the Mediterranean? Where did they?
So this sailing part of my family, they're from Brittany on the Atlantic side, and Brittany is known for sailors even to this day. A lot of the offshore trans-ocean around the world records are set by sailors from this region of France.
Wow. Any connections to World War II or anything like that? Where were they in the French Navy?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be French in France at the time and not have a connection to this. So my grandparents, my great-grandparents, they lived in Nazi-occupied France. My great-grandfather was an officer in the French military, and he was a prisoner of war.
Wow.
He escaped 3 times, but was caught every time and brought back to the camp. When he was finally released at the end of the war, he was emaciated. He was very skinny, underfed. Sure. And then the Vietnam, which at the time had been a French colony,
Yeah.
sought its independence.
Dien Bien Phu in 1954, right?
So he only had a little while to gain his strength back before he was shipped to Vietnam.
So he was there too.
He was there before the American involvement, obviously, but yes. So our history, our heritage of military runs deep, even though we're relatively new to this country as a
Now,
family.
were you born here or were you?
Yeah, I was born in Huntington, so I'm local.
Okay,
I'm
all right.
yeah.
I'm first generation too. My mom's from Ireland. She was one of 15, and
One of 15.
one of 15. So sometimes you see things a little bit differently from the European side
Yeah.
itself. And she's from Ireland, and I got a strong Long Island accent. So it's a little bit different. But so your father's still living today? Is he?
Yep.
So he's got to be proud in terms of your group and everything, right?
Absolutely. He was a huge part of the inspiration because already, we were raised not only with a certain affinity for the military, but also in France, no matter where you go, in every village, there's going to be a memorial either to World War I or World War II. It's impossible to move through France and not be aware of that.
Yeah, there's two independent states, right? You have your French independent state, and then you got your French independent state from the Nazis, right?
Yeah.
And it's a big part of the lives over there.
And I think what Americans maybe don't understand too well is that France is very aware of the sacrifice of young Americans. There's a song that I was exposed to a lot growing up, and I'll translate the lyrics into English for the audience, but it goes, thanks to a young man from Georgia who died in Normandy, we're not speaking German. So, that sentiment is really there. And that, was passed to my dad, which was passed to me. And so that leads to sail ahead because when I was 14 years old and my older brother was 16, one day we were getting ready to go to school. And we heard on News 12 that at least 22 veterans were taking their lives every day. This absolutely blew our minds. How could this be?
Yeah, how something like that could happen over here, right?
And as lifelong sailors, and as my brother used to say, when he would flunk a math test and then go sailing, he'd totally forget about the math test. So if that worked for him on a therapeutic level, someone who was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, no doubt could benefit from that.
Wow. It's you got that service background, right? That your parents, your family members, the fact that you had family members during World War II, and then in terms of fighting against the Vietnamese communists, that's, you don't always hear that. That's a big deal. And when you look at the movie Saving Private Ryan, I believe a lot of the movie might have been filmed in Ireland. And it was some of the scenes from the beaches and so on. And they said that the French were not overly pleased with being filmed on Normandy, not because they were trying to be difficult, but because, like you said, so many lives were lost there and they didn't want it disrupted that much, and they kind of tried to ensure that it was preserved and it was taken care of, and it wasn't like completely like dismantled or anything like that. And,
yeah, I've been to Normandy a few times. I've been to the cemeteries there, and I've been to Pointe du Hoc, where the U.S. Army Rangers, and you're absolutely right. They preserved that section, that field. You see the craters from the bombings on D-Day, and the bunkers. So
when you went to Pointe du Hoc, what was that like? I mean, the elevation was.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine. I know the casualty rates were like more than half, I think, for the Rangers, but seeing the cliffs with my own eyes, the 100-foot cliffs that they scaled under fire, I mean, I don't know how any of them survived. It's
they went back there years later, right? And this is like recent times, and they were interviewed and they were looking at each other and they were saying, "We don't know how the heck we did this," and it's.
Well, it took courage, it took guts, it took determination, and that's
when you were at Normandy and you looked right out on the water, was there anything that you were thinking about from a sailing, from a navigation point of view?
From a navigation point of view,
because you had the largest armada that was ever created off those shores.
Yeah, it must have been a shocking sight to see that, to wake up and see that. It definitely was a large scale, huge scale invasion. You have to think the logistics behind that are complicated. But then again, the thing I go back to is I can't even begin to comprehend the courage that it took to run those beaches, scale those cliffs, all under fire.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, thankfully, it's something I hope I will never need to
against
know.
Fortifications that were built for a couple of years, you know, from the Spanish border all the way up towards Norway, the Atlantic Wall, right? It's amazing. So it's very interesting speaking with. This is like a different type of angle in terms of history, in terms of veterans' needs and stuff of that nature. So now, when do you graduate from Huntington?
I graduated from Whitman in 2017.
All right, so
high school.
It's not too long ago, right? It's about 8 years ago. So you're doing some great things then, right?
Yeah,
So
thank you.
You graduate from Walt Whitman. Where do you go after that?
I was at Stony Brook University. I studied history. And the reason I chose Stony Brook was because I could commute there.
Yeah, I'm a Stony Brook history.
Oh,
yeah,
no
I graduated
way.
from there.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, about 26 years ago.
Okay.
So
that basically allowed me to stay close and keep running Sailhead, which at the time was extremely important to me. It still is. At the time, it was a hobby or maybe a passion project. It's a more accurate way to describe it. Now it's the way I make my living. So I'm extremely lucky, you know, to be doing this.
Sure.
And I'm very proud to be doing this too.
Now, what was the driving factor that you said, all right, we got to do something here, when you heard about the number 22?
So when we heard about that, my brother and I were appalled, and we thought, you know, let's do something. So the first veteran we had the pleasure of taking to the water was from the Vietnam War. And he had PTSD, which he was going to therapy for 20 years to treat. And we started by sailing in the winter on dinghies, so 16-foot boats. With hindsight, of course, it's not a very good idea to take an elderly,
not easy, right?
No. But when we got back on the beach, he gave me and my brother a hug, and he started crying. You know, we started crying, and we're like, why are we crying? And that's when he said that was the best therapy he ever had.
Those are some good tears, right?
Those are some good tears.
Right?
And that was the catalyst. I guess we already obviously suspected that sailing could help, but that was a moment when it really slapped us across the face, and we're like, wow. You know, for us, we take sailing for granted because we've always done it. But for some people, you know, you mentioned we live on an island. It's true.
Yeah.
But how many people have ever actually gone sailing? I think it's a really small number compared to the total population of our island.
I mean, we have grown up in one of the prettiest areas in the country. What do we always complain about? Noise, traffic, you know, the lights. Where we are right here, the water's just on the other side of the museum.
Yeah.
And you have the Webb Naval Institute. I mean, you have Merchant Marine Academy that's here. Maritime under the Throgs Neck Bridge. So there's a lot of shipping. All the whale boats over the years and everything else. And I mean, you have a lot of boating that happens here. And then you guys fit in great because you're motivated to do it. You know what you're doing. You grew up with it. It's kind of in your family blood, right? In your DNA. And you guys have come across at a very, very good time, really at the end of the War on Terror. And now you have all these veterans that were young guys. They're now working and trying to have families and homes, but they're dealing, you know, with some unknown, right? Things that just years ago was not spoken about.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, they may not even know what's going on in their own heads because it's not like there's this great awareness when you go into the military. You know, post-traumatic stress disorder is, simply put, it's a physiological reaction to a traumatic event. So your body perceives a near-death experience, and there are some changes that happen that you're not necessarily aware of. And then for potentially the rest of your life, you're dealing with the ramifications of that. So what we try to do, and then, we started this when we were young, my brother and I, so we benefited a lot from the guidance of my parents, who are entrepreneurs. So they really encouraged us to jump into this. And then the community, everyone, the vast majority of people living on Long Island want to help veterans, but they may not even know truly what the problem is. And what we've found is people want to help. And if you just tell them how they can help, they will. And so our partnerships with yacht clubs, and sailing organizations, and the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy too, partnerships like that have allowed us to, over the past 12 years, bring 5,000 veterans to the water. And what's amazing is some of these veterans who are from the Vietnam War, who've been living on Long Island for 3/4 of a century, have never seen the Huntington Lighthouse, for example.
From the water.
From the water, yeah. So it's like, to be able to offer that opportunity just because I'm communicating with people, it is like,
what are some of the first words that they'll say? You have them out on the water. You're out at this time. It's choppy, right? What will they say? Like, what will they bring up to you?
Well, it's variable. It depends on the weather, because with sailing you can have a very relaxed, like, drink your margarita on the sunset, or you can be in a tropical storm, so sure. It's variable. I remember the first time we were sailing with Angel. It's funny because as a sailor, I have these expectations for how I want them to go. When we went sailing with Angel, we were on a 70-foot racing sloop, and there was no wind. And I remember thinking, like, crap, they're going to hate this. They're never going to come back. But about halfway through, Angel was telling me, like, this is one of the most peaceful feelings that he felt. And I don't want to misrepresent what he said, so we'll ask him later.
Yeah, but it's also different, too. If you get guys, they've never done that, I've never done that. And I've rode my bike down Port Jefferson, flying down those hills and swimming in the cove and all those different things. So it's different experiences, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think there's something just calming about the water. That's why people like to go to the beach, read by the beach or whatever. Being on the water is a unique experience. I feel like it's sort of like when you look at the stars at night, you kind of just, things shift into perspective, and you're not really worried about, like, when you step on a boat and then you're in the elements, you don't really care about whatever was stressing you out a few hours ago, because suddenly you're in this new environment, you're in nature. And what I love about sailboats is that, we have to work together. It's not just one guy who turns the key and does all the work. You'll be in charge of the front sail. Angel will take the mainsail. I'll be driving, and we're all in constant communication. We have to execute maneuvers correctly, and that sort of, I've not been in the military, but in my mind, that recreates a squad dynamic.
Yeah, but you know a little bit more now than you think, because you're with these guys and you've done your own research, and the teamwork atmosphere with the military. There's certain things you just can't do by yourself. You have to rely on the person next to you, and that sort of thing. So I think you hit the nail on the head a little bit. This is unbelievable. And when I found out about your group was through the Rocky Point VFW. They were doing the veteran stand down. So I was writing something up on it for the South Shore Press. So I was going through all the groups, and some of them I know very well. Others I went on their site. And yours, I just didn't know. I'm not a sailor. I don't have any boats outside of kayak, and that's it. And I went on your site. It was great. It was. I was looking at this here. I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. And then I wrote up on it. Right. I did a little research, and I just said it. This is a different angle on how to handle some veterans affairs, treatment, things of that nature. It's just something else. So hopefully this gets out to other veterans, because this is one of the largest, veterans counties between Nassau and Suffolk County in America. Yeah. So you're gonna probably have hopefully some phone calls or emails that, hey, I'd like to, take a look at that. Maybe go slow, but take a look at that.
Yeah, everyone's welcome.
So now, what was your biggest challenge starting out?
Starting out, we were limited by the number of boats that we had. So my parents were hugely helpful in like going on Craigslist and finding more dinghies that we could sail on. I went to a sailing school called Oak Cliff in Oyster Bay, and they let us leave the boats on their beach, which was really generous. And eventually, we had a few dinghies, but we could only take so many veterans out on those. So the biggest challenge was, I guess, going from there to meeting with the Centerport Yacht Club, which was the first yacht club we partnered with. As a 15-year-old, and my brother was 16, and saying, "Hey, we have a great idea."
That's a challenge in itself, right?
Yeah, we're gonna use your boats, your crew, to take some veterans out. You guys are paying for it.
Yeah, sure.
It was just an idea at the time, and they said yes. So it's real kudos to them.
And you don't know if you don't ask.
Exactly.
It could be the craziest thing. You don't know, right?
And now it's been 10 years. We're still going on with them, and we plan to do it for 100 years plus.
It's a good relationship, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it just goes to show that people want to do good things. Sometimes they just don't know how, or that there even is a problem.
Yeah. Okay. And what were some of the biggest successes that you've seen so far?
So I mentioned before we took 5,000 veterans sailing. I'm very proud of that, but the biggest successes they're harder to quantify, but that's easily that we've saved lives. And we know that because some people have said that to us, and there are probably a few more people who haven't said that, whose lives we've saved.
That you could tell, though, right?
Yeah. I mean,
what will they genuinely say? Like, I just have a better outlook on things now, or this has helped me.
Yeah, I mean, it depends, but definitely you're in the right ballpark there. Some people, there's this one woman who she was also an Iraq veteran. She's a major when she left the army, and she couldn't leave her house. When she went to the supermarket, the open space parking lot, she didn't like it. She thought she was imagining snipers. So she reached out to me, and we had developed a relationship over the phone over the course of a few weeks. And then when she was comfortable enough, and at my persistent insistence that she come out, she finally came out to the first event with the Sea Cliff Yacht Club. And then we were sailing with her almost every weekend for a year. And at the second event with the Sea Cliff Yacht Club, I asked her to be a speaker. And she said for the first time to me, but in front of everyone, that we saved her life, because if not for that, who knows where she would have been. So, we deal. I personally interact with hundreds of veterans every season, and many of them are homeless. A lot of them are doing fine, I think. Not all of them are struggling, but we take in anyone.
Isn't that amazing? Homeless veterans.
Yeah.
That something like that could happen in one of the strongest economic countries that this world has ever known.
Yeah. That says something. But it's so in her case, she needed a friend, I guess. And that's another thing. When veterans come back from service, their brothers and sisters go back home to Georgia, Washington, Texas, Oklahoma, wherever, and then they go back home and suddenly they're alone. So I think a big part of what Sail Ahead is we're just a community.
You get these veterans from all over the country, right? Mm-hmm. Do they come back, or will they send people your way from, areas outside the tri-state area?
So just because it's complicated for people to come from outside the tri-state area, most of the veterans who we deal with are on Long Island.
Okay, it's from this this region here.
Yeah, and like I think the New York City Mayor's office uses us as a reference. So we do have veterans like they come from Staten Island weekly during the season, which is to me it's like wow, 2-hour commute. I really hope the wind is good.
Yeah, sure. Well, you can't control everything, right? So.
But for some events, all of our events are in honor of a particular veteran who had died by suicide. So there's one event in honor of Ryan James Day, who was a U.S. Army Ranger, and he was stationed in Tacoma, Washington, when he took his life. So for this event, we fundraise so that we can buy the plane tickets for his friends.
Is he a local guy, or?
He was from New Jersey.
New Jersey.
His family now lives in Colorado. And they come out every year from Colorado. His buddies, his Ranger buddies, come out from like Washington, Texas, and so on. So we do have a national footprint, if you will. But just because we sail multiple times every week, it's just easier. It's more accessible for the people who are local.
And they like pay the ultimate respect, right? They
yeah.
Come out. Do they come out in uniform, or are they?
No, because I think. What we try to do is we try to make it casual.
Okay.
And although it's very heavy, there are speeches,
which makes sense because you're trying to take the stress away,
right?
Rather than
we don't want them to feel like they have to perform. We just want we just genuinely, as cheesy as this sounds, we just want to be like their family and have a good time. And then not even mention the word therapy, and we think it happens as a byproduct of like a good time and being close.
Wow, it's unbelievable. This is done almost 80 podcasts inside the year since January. Wow. This is one of the most interesting.
Thank you, Rich.
Because I'm a guy. I helped do a Wounded Warrior golf outing since 2008, and you do see different programs, you see different groups and the veterans and the severity of PTSD, which is different for everyone, right? And this is a different way of tackling a huge problem, and you're using our waters around us to be very constructive. This is like an unbelievable program that you guys have done.
Thank you very much.
Something that you got to be proud of at a very, very young age. You understand the history, the politics, the military. Things that they go through overseas, and then when they come home, it's an outstanding endeavor.
Thank you.
And we're gonna talk to Sean with Angel for our next episode here on the Fog of War and Humanity on hmTv. Please rejoin us.